Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, found himself in a bind that few stars ever face, owing a manager over $2 million. This wasn't just any debt, it was a situation that threatened to upend the life of a man who had already changed the face of music. To understand how Elvis ended up in this mess, we need to rewind to the late 1970s, a time when his career was on a wild ride filled with highs and lows. In 1973, Elvis was on fire. He was performing non-stop, touring through states like Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, and even making it to the High Sierra Theater in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, for a short but intense engagement. After a busy stint in Las Vegas in May, he was back on the road again in June, heading to cities like Pittsburgh and Georgia. But just as he seemed to be in his element, RCA Records, his record company, stepped in with new demands. They weren't just happy with his performances, they wanted more records, more singles, and more of his time. RCA's new approach was clear but unsettling. In a letter, a senior vice president told Elvis he had to return to the studio to make 2 new albums and 4 new singles, all while maintaining his exhausting touring schedule. Elvis, who had already spent most of the year singing on stage, had no choice but to comply. RCA offered him a choice of studios, but he chose to stay close to home at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. The recording sessions were far from happy. On the first night, Elvis was too sick to show up, so the musicians recorded without him. The next night, he arrived with a different kind of trouble: guns, his wife Linda, his daughter Lisa Marie, and his karate teacher. His focus was off, and the session produced only one hit-worthy song, "I've Got a Thing About You, Baby," but it was too short to be a real single. To make matters worse, his favorite microphone went missing, and he lost steam. By the end of the week, Elvis was back in Los Angeles feeling defeated. RCA was not pleased. They saw Elvis as a valuable asset, but also as a problem. His behavior was erratic, and they felt they could not control him. The Hollywood Reporter captured the sentiment perfectly, saying, "It is tragic, disheartening, and absolutely depressing to see Elvis in such diminishing stature." On his closing night at the Hilton in Las Vegas, Elvis went too far, appearing on stage with a toy monkey and making jokes that were not well received. The Colonel, Elvis's manager, Tom Parker, was furious. This confrontation was just the beginning of a deeper rift between Elvis and Parker. Elvis, feeling the weight of Parker's constant control, finally found the courage to stand up to him. The argument was intense, with both men threatening to quit. Parker, however, had a trump card. He had a bill to present over $2 million. Elvis, despite his fame and fortune, did not have that amount lying around. The situation was dire, and both men knew they had to find a solution, but neither was willing to back down. The debt was a puzzle no one could fully solve. Graceland, Elvis's famous mansion, was worth $500,000 at best, and Elvis was constantly dipping into his bank account. But the bill was much larger. Elvis's father, Vernon, was distraught, realizing the gravity of their situation. Parker, on the other hand, remained calm, knowing Elvis had no choice but to face the music, or in this case, the bill. While Elvis and Parker were locked in their standoff, Elvis found a temporary distraction. He hired a group of gospel singers called Voice, originally as a gift for Tom Jones, but ended up keeping them as his personal backup band. This decision was a small victory in a sea of troubles, but it did little to resolve the looming financial crisis. As the days passed, Elvis's future became increasingly uncertain. His managers and friends worried, knowing that his actions could affect not just his career but the livelihoods of those around him. Parker, meanwhile, played a waiting game, knowing that Elvis's bluff would eventually collapse. But for now, the king was in a cage of his own making, with a debt that seemed insurmountable. This was not the end, but it was a pivotal moment in Elvis's life. The king of rock and roll, once unstoppable, was facing a challenge that would test his spirit and resolve. The question was, could he find a way out of this mess, or would the weight of his debts break him? Only time would tell. Elvis blinked, surprised. Parker had guessed correctly. Elvis had no idea how to move forward or find the $2 million. Both he and Vernon felt lost and scared about the unknown. Taking a deep breath, Elvis decided to call the Colonel. He told them they'd go back to normal, whatever that meant now. Elvis realized he needed someone smart and looking toward the future. Parker was stuck in the past, still owing money to casinos, and didn't understand modern music. He saw Elvis as just a loud singer with famous songs, not a true artist. Parker's ideas were old-fashioned, focusing on just recording any songs with Elvis's voice, without much care for quality or style. Elvis's talent, clouded by drugs and sadness, was starting to fade. A new manager could have helped him tackle his addiction and opened doors to new opportunities like shows in London or Tokyo. He could have worked with new songwriters and producers, spent more time in the studio, and received the respect his success deserved. A fresh manager might even have laughed off the idea of Elvis owing Parker money, suggesting a quick European tour to earn and repay it. However, the Colonel won. He knew Elvis inside out and understood Vernon's timid nature. Things went back to how they used to be. Elvis said goodbye to Linda for a few days and headed to his house in Palm Springs. An RCA mobile recording unit followed soon after. Elvis planned to layer his voice onto some backing tracks recorded with Stax a few weeks earlier. But first, he wanted the new group voice to record some songs. While waiting, he decided on a whim that Sean Nielsen needed a hair transplant. As James Burton and the engineers worked, Elvis watched the operation. Then, instead of working on new songs, he sang a cover of Are You Sincere, an old Andy Williams song. It was a step back into familiar territory, but it was 1973 and he was still relying on the past. The song later became a country hit. Yet Elvis spent his time partying, surrounded by women. The chance for change had passed, and it raised questions: was it too late for a comeback? Around this time, Elvis had to settle a new argument with Priscilla. After their divorce, she had accepted a smaller settlement and some monthly payments. But now, she wanted a new agreement with lawyers involved. In court, she ended up with more money, $725,000 upfront and ongoing payments. Elvis wasn't bothered by the cash, but he disliked the public fight. He flew to Memphis, where he was briefly hospitalized for breathing issues due to his addiction to the painkiller Demerol and a bleeding ulcer. He promised to stay sober, and for a while his spirits lifted. After recovering, Elvis returned to the Stax Studios. His first priority was watching football, but soon he dived into recording. It was his best session in 18 months, producing hits like Promised Land, My Boy, and a cover of Loving Arms. These songs showed he still had it, but the good mood didn't last. By January 1974, at 39, Elvis faced health issues again, small problems at first, like a toenail issue and toothache. His busy schedule didn't help. He played nightly in Las Vegas, then toured heavily across several states, leading to poor reviews for his performances, described as listless. His health and workload were taking a toll, yet he kept pushing, performing nearly non-stop. Elvis Presley's life was a whirlwind of extravagance and excess. He loved giving cars to his friends and admirers, thinking that sharing his wealth brought joy. Cars were more than just vehicles to him, they were symbols of American dream and freedom. He often changed the cars he gave away, sometimes in a single day, showing how the act of giving itself was what mattered most to him, not the value of the gifts. Linda, his longtime partner, received many gifts from him: cars, clothes, and jewelry. Other women also got attention and presents, like a new Corvair after spending time with Elvis, or a Cadillac given to an elderly lady he admired from afar. For Elvis, the thrill was in seeing people's happiness when they received his gifts. He believed in the power of sharing, even if some of those gifts were later sold for cash. Elvis's behavior sometimes showed a darker side. He was often unfaithful to Linda, moving on to new women quickly, which hurt her deeply. Despite his declarations of love, he treated relationships casually, seeking new excitement. His employees, too, felt the effects of his unpredictable nature. He would sometimes betray their trust by acting on personal desires, like having a relationship with Jerry Schilling's girlfriend. As the years went on, Elvis's passion for performing began to fade. His concerts became repetitive with the same songs and little variation. However, his interest in karate stayed strong. He thought about making a movie about karate, envisioning himself as a hero like Bruce Lee. But this dream never came to fruition, mainly because he lacked the discipline and courage to carry it through without help. At Graceland, his home, Elvis had complete freedom. He transformed a room with bizarre, exotic furniture into what was nicknamed the Jungle Room. This space was a reflection of his love for new things and his disinterest in the old and fancy. To Elvis, the value of something wasn't in its age or price, but in its novelty and fun. In Vegas, Elvis's behavior became more erratic. He started giving long, unscripted speeches during his shows, often poking fun at other stars and sharing personal stories. He became defensive when criticized, especially about his drug use. In a heated moment, he denied being strung out, except for being strung out on music, threatening anyone who dared say otherwise. Elvis's denial about his drug use was clear, though his behavior told a different story. His outbursts only fueled rumors that he couldn't handle his personal struggles. Despite his issues, he felt better after his rants, though his closest ones, like Priscilla and Lisa Marie, were distressed by his actions. In the end, Elvis Presley remained a complex figure, a man who gave generously yet acted selfishly, who dreamed grandly but often failed to follow through, and who struggled with personal demons while projecting an image of strength and confidence on stage. His life story is a mix of brilliance and flaws, a reminder that even stars face their own battles, hidden behind the glitz and glamour.